Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today with something very special. That is a vlog from my recent trip to Booktopia. Now, if you watch my channel regularly, you've heard me talking about Booktopia for the last couple of months, all the lead up to it. Well, it finally happened. This past weekend was this amazing, very special event in Vermont. So I just wanted to give you a little introduction, and then I've got videos and photos from the weekend. However, I didn't take as many videos and photos as I meant to because I was just having so much fun. I kept forgetting. So I'll give you a little tiny intro, and then I'll pop in again here and there with some explanations for the times when I forgot to record anything while I was there. Toward the end of this video, you'll see a recap of the 10 books and authors that were featured at Booktopia this year. I do have photos and videos of each of them, but I'll also give you a very short, really quick summary of what the book's about, and if I read it, what I thought of it. So just a quick recap. Booktopia is a very special event, really unique in the book world. Their tagline is where authors and readers meet, and that's really what the weekend is. It's not like going to see an author at a bookstore typically. And it's not like, I guess it would be, one of the authors said she thought it was most similar to a book festival, but I think it's even different than that because of the way the authors and the readers interact all weekend. So it's just a wonderful time for, in this case, there were 10 authors. This was kind of a record-setting year. There are usually about 8 or 9, each with a recent book out. And this year, I think there were maybe 75 to 85 attendees, readers. So all together with booksellers and authors and readers, roughly about 100 people. And you're just together all weekend, going to author sessions and having meals together, talking about books and everything else. It's a whole lot of fun. And this was the 7th year that my mom and I attended it together. We started going in 2015. Booktopia was started many years ago by the fabulous podcast Books on the Nightstand, which was hosted by Ann Kingman and Michael Kindness. They were both sales reps for Penguin Random House, and they had this book podcast that was wonderful. They don't do it anymore, but you can still find the archives online, and I highly recommend them. And years ago, Anne and Michael started Booktopia. And at the time, the North Shire bookstore in Manchester, Vermont, where I went this weekend, was the first location where they held it, but it grew. And they ended up doing 3 a year, which I'm so exhausted from this weekend. That's kind of hard to imagine. But they hosted 3 Booktopias a year in independent bookstores all over the US. So they're the ones that get credit for starting this. When I heard them say on the podcast that in 2015 that it was going to be their last Booktopia up in Vermont, I decided I had to go before it ended. And so my mom came along with me. We went in 2015, fabulous. But then the North Shire bookstore decided it was such an amazing weekend that they were going to keep doing it on their own. And they did, and they have. So 7 years in total for my mom and I. A lot of the same people return year after year. So it's not just about seeing the authors, but about seeing all your book friends that you only get to see once a year. Now, these days, of course, we stay in touch on Facebook, but such a delight to see everyone again. And every year you meet new people, so you don't have to know anyone to go. If this sounds great to you, I highly encourage you to plan to go next year. It's usually the first weekend in May. This year it was the last weekend in April. So around that time of year, Northshire Books in Manchester, Vermont, you know I will be talking about it here on my channel. So I started out the weekend with breakfast with two of my good friends. One that I just saw last year, the other that hadn't been since before the pandemic. So I hadn't seen her in 5 years. Fabulous to reunite. It's a beautiful morning in Manchester, Vermont. It is often raining and cold when we come up here. And it is in the 40s this morning, but it's going up close to 60. My mom and I got in last night. This is where we stay. There are loads of beautiful inns and B&Bs in Manchester. We just stay in this little guest house. Yeah, we're on completely different schedules, so this works well for us. We can each do our own thing, but we're right next to each other. And it's also like a 1-block walk to the bookstore. So yeah, when I leave early, my mom can just walk down to the bookstore when she's ready. And when I come back from my nap, you know, she's close enough that she can come back when she wants. So works out great. I am going to meet some friends for breakfast. And here I am on beautiful Main Street in Manchester, Vermont. It's a great town. I'm just a block away from our guest house, and there it is. The Northshire Bookstore. That's where all the action happens. Right now I am heading to possibly my favorite breakfast place anywhere. There it is, Up for Breakfast. And it has a very apt name because it's up at the top of those stairs. All right. So after breakfast, I went to register at the bookstore, signed in, got my badge, and with every registration, you do have to pay for Booktopia, but they had different packages depending on which part of the weekend you wanted to participate in. Of course, I went for the whole thing, and it's really inexpensive for what you get. I think it was $150 for the whole package, roughly. And with that registration fee, every attendee gets a $50 gift card to Northshire Books. In my case, they definitely get their money back because I spent about $200 in books. I do a lot of my book gift shopping at Booktopia every year. So before things got started at 11 that morning, I did a lot of shopping.
Yeah, pay for Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll? Crunchyroll. Yeah. You can watch it. So I started.
And then the first big event of the weekend is called This Gift Card is Burning a Hole in My Pocket. And it is each of the booksellers from Northshire getting up. This is a big event that everybody's in together. And each of the booksellers tells us about 4 to 5 books that are either have recently come out, usually, that they're really excited about. So this is just fabulous. Your to-be-read list grows exponentially during these sessions.
Tinkers has written one of the most quietly profound and beautifully executed novels I have read in a very long time, and it's one that I will long remember.
Talk about is Grief is for People by Sloane Crosley, which chronicles two different types of grief over the course of one summer.
What I'm going to talk about is a book that probably a lot of you have at least some passing familiarity with. It's sort of been making the rounds. It's been on bestseller a lot. And it's called The Comfort of Prose, A Backyard Year by Margaret Renkl, who also wrote.
But I'm going to say I agree with Bethany. The God of the Woods is going to be a great, fun summer read. It's really well done, and I think it's about maybe over 400 pages, but it just flies. You just fly through it. One that Stan's going to talk about, Queen of Dirt Island by Donald Ryan. I just thought it was a beautiful, powerful, female-focused story of multiple generations of women living together in Ireland.
2022. Was Brendan Slocum last year or was it 2022?
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
So Emily Crow is going to be talking about his latest book, Symphony of Secrets, and of course he wasn't here because luckily he zoomed in with his violin. And Ben Shattuck, who wrote a book called Six Walks that I liked very much, has a new book coming out in July called History of Sound. It's short stories. I'm reading it right now. It's great.
We'd be remiss if Rachel and I both didn't get a little bit of a chance to share just a couple quick books that we've really been enjoying over here alongside our wonderful book-selling team. So I have 3 stories that I realize all very much focus on women. So first, I'll just talk about Knife, which is, of course, Salman Rushdie's new story. It's a memoir after what happened to him on August 12th of 2022 at the
So I'm starting off with a graphic novel by Naveed Madavia, who is also a cartoonist for The New Yorker. This is actually graphic memoir, I guess is the term we use now. It's not fiction, it is his memoir of himself and his wife moving from San Francisco to very rural Idaho to try to homestead there and start a family. The book is called
Next up come the author sessions. This is the heart of the weekend. You get to choose which ones you go to. Unfortunately, because of my chronic illness, I do have to nap in the afternoon. But I really tried to limit what I miss. So I did miss one session each day. But for each session, there are 3 different options. You choose which authors you want to go to. The sessions are kind of a combination of things. Generally, they're more interactive than like when you go see an author at a bookstore. Many of the authors will read a short part of their book, but it's more like a book group to me. As you saw with me in the weeks leading up to Booktopia, I read a lot of the books ahead of time, and so did many of the other attendees. So in lots of cases, people have already read the book. There are no spoilers because we know not everyone has read it. But so you get a chance to actually discuss the book with the author. And there's always time for questions and answers. And Booktopians always have some great questions. So here are a few quick photos from the author sessions that I attended. Not the best place to record. There is a little traffic out here, but I just had a minute in between authors, and so wanted to give you a quick update because I completely forgot. I was having so much fun last night, I completely forgot to get my camera out to do videos, to even take photos. Just fabulous time last night, as always. Friday night, there's always a big dinner. All the attendees are there, and all the authors and the booksellers from Northshire, and we just had a great time. Delicious dinner. It was at one of the inns in town. Delicious dinner and really great book trivia. So we had a good team at our table, and we did not place in the top 3, but we did quite well. Had a lot of fun. Mary Beth Keane, the author that I saw yesterday, was at our table, so it was really nice to chat with her and get to know her better. She did quite well at book trivia. I got a few answers myself, which I was very happy with. So a lot of fun, and by the time I got back to my room, I was just exhausted last night. Just read a little bit and went to bed. This morning, I just saw Simon Van Buie. Oh my gosh. He is entertaining and warm and really, really funny. And his book, Sipsworth, is just wonderful. So I definitely recommend that. Take a look at that. Really enjoyed listening to him and getting to meet him. I'm trying to remember the schedule. Next up, I'm going to be going to the session with Shannon Reed, author of Why We Read. Her book was very entertaining and funny, so I'm sure this will be a great event. And finally, late Saturday afternoon, early evening is what they call the big event. Now, this is where all the authors appear. Each author gets 10 minutes. They can talk about anything they want to. They might talk about their inspiration for their book, a little overview of their book. Some of them do read a bit. We had one this year who actually performed part of her book, which was fabulous. And so that even if you missed some author sessions or hadn't even planned to read certain books, you get to hear from every single author. And very often it convinces you should read the book. I'll give you a recap of those in just a moment. After the big event on Saturday, which kind of officially ends Booktopia, there was a big gathering at one of the local bars. I'm pretty wiped out by that point. We tend to do a smaller dinner with a couple of friends. This year there were 7 of us. We went to one of Manchester's wonderful restaurants, Union Underground. One was someone that I've become very close to at Booktopia. I see her every year. Another was someone who has been to every Booktopia that I have, but we've never really had a chance to talk and get to know each other. She and her daughter were at our table Friday night, so I invited them to dinner Saturday. And they had another couple of people with them, her daughter-in-law and her mother. So we had 3 groups of mothers and daughters at our dinner Saturday night. So there were 7 of us. We had a blast. Yes, of course we talked about books, but we also talked about everything else. Lots of laughter, lots of funny stories and anecdotes. Really enjoyed getting to know the people I didn't know as well, and just had a wonderful time. And by the time that ends, My mother and I are both pretty wiped out. Next morning we got up and packed. One last stop at Up for breakfast before we left. And then I had the long journey home, driving to Connecticut to drop my mom off, have lunch and a nap while I'm there, and then the long Sunday evening drive back to Delaware. And the traffic's always really heavy between there. You've got to get through New York and the Jersey Turnpike, and so it was pretty exhausting. It's Tuesday now, and I'm still pretty tired. But it was all fabulous, and I can't wait to do it all again next year. So now some video and photo clips from the big event where each author talked. I think I have at least a photo of every author, but I'm also going to tell you just a tiny bit about each book and what I thought of it if I read it. In one case, one of these fabulous authors actually performed part of her book, and I did record some of that for you. So that's a treat. I will try to keep my recaps very short, so hang in there. First up was Sipsworth by Simon Van Buie. This was a Booktopia favorite this year for sure. As you can see from the cover, it's about an older woman in England. She's kind of given up on life. She's lost her husband and her son. She's in her mid-80s. She's gone back to her hometown in England, basically just to wait to die. I know that sounds dark. This is not a dark book. This is a wonderful, happy, hopeful book because she meets, her name's Helen. Helen meets a mouse. And I know that sounds weird. And when my mom first heard about it, she was like, yeah, that doesn't sound good. So I think I've convinced her it's worth reading. Fabulous book. Warm, funny. It's kind of got Man from Oof vibes. Sort of the same kind of story about Helen finding a reason to live, finding community. Really wonderful. The author, Simon, was, of the author sessions I went to, he was hands down the most entertaining author. He had us laughing from beginning to end. His talk was just hilarious. It was all about his inspiration for Sipsworth, which made me love the book even more because so much of it was from Simon's own experience. He did get a pet mouse during the pandemic. So the isolation he writes about, everything about the mouse, much of that came from personal experience. He also volunteers with some like elder care homes, and so some of that came from personal experience as well. Highly recommend Sipsworth. Here's Simon. Next up, probably the biggest name author at the whole weekend, Carolyn Levitt, and her new novel, Days of Wonder. Now, unfortunately, this came out just days before Booktopia. I was really hoping it would show up on Libby. I had requested it so that I could listen to the audio while I was driving. It did not. I'm still hoping it comes in. I will listen to it. But it sounds like a wonderful book. I've read Caroline Levitt's books before and enjoyed them. This is about a teen girl in New York City who's head over heels in love with her boyfriend. And then something happens. She's accused of murdering her boyfriend's father, and she goes to prison for it. Now, she and her boyfriend both have no memories of that night, but she really doesn't think she murdered this boy's father. She was pregnant when she was sent to prison, so she gave up her baby. She's released 6 years later and goes to look for her daughter. But there's still apparently this mystery throughout the book of who actually killed the boy's father, who was a prominent judge in New York. So it sounds fabulous. Family drama, mystery, suspense. I'm definitely looking forward to reading it. Here's Caroline. Next up was The Audacity by Ryan Chapman. There's a little glare on the screen. I'll put a picture up. This I have talked about on my channel because I really enjoyed it. It is a satire of the ultra rich, and it is loosely based on a Theranos type company and an Elizabeth Holmes type character. So there's fraud involved. And that character, Victoria, is like this driven, highly motivated woman, built this multi-million-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, and that turned out to be fraudulent. But the focus in this story is on Victoria's husband, the completely unwitting spouse. He had no idea that there was any fraud involved. He's heard about it through the company's board. He knows the news is about to break and that his life as he knows it is over. So he accepts an invitation that was actually for Victoria to this private island where the ultra rich, the author says, not the 1%, but the 0.001%, are going to gather for something called the Quorum, where they aim to solve the world's problems with their money. So a lot of satire here. Some of it's very funny. There is a lot, because Guy, the spouse, knows his life's about to be over. He's going to lose everything. He may even be accused of being a part of it. He's just there. He is not there to solve the world's problems. He's just there to escape for a while in the most luxurious place possible. So there's a lot of drinking and drugs and some sex in this novel. So it's not for everyone. I know not everyone wants to read about that, but it is very smart, very clever, very funny. So that was The Audacity. Here's Ryan Chapman. Next, the author I was most looking forward to meeting was Mary Beth Keane, whose book, The Half Moon, was a Booktopia book. Just this past February, I read Ask Again Yes as a buddy read with Nikki of Red Dot Reads. We both loved that book and had so much to talk about with each other. The Half Moon is along the same lines, that kind of in-depth, emotionally complex novel about relationships and connections. Here the focus is on midlife and a husband and wife who are struggling. I absolutely loved meeting Mary Beth Keane and listening to her talking about the book with her. As you can see, another book I have not read yet, but as you can see, I plan to. As I said, I'm a big fan of Chris Bohjalian. I've read, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 of his novels in the past, starting with the double bind decades ago. So always enjoy his books. This is The Princess of Las Vegas. As I said, I did miss his event on Sunday, but I've heard it was wonderful. So The Princess of Las Vegas is about a Princess Di impersonator in Vegas who works in kind of a dingy casino on the Strip, but her show is very popular. And then the wealthy owner of another casino is murdered, and somehow she's tangled up in this. It was described by one reviewer as a riveting tale of identity, obsession, fintech, and high-tech mobsters. The Princess of Las Vegas is an addictive, wildly original thriller from one of our most extraordinary storytellers. So my mother loved this book, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Don't have any pictures of Chris since I missed the Sunday event. Next up, a book I am still reading, My Beloved Life by Amitava Kumar. He was another very entertaining speaker. He's a professor and one of the Booktopia attendees. A friend of mine said, I would love to take one of his classes. So this is the epic story of a life, a man's life. It begins in India in 1935 when he is born. So it is all about not only his life, but also the lives of his daughter and his grandchild. So I'm only in part 2, although I'm pretty far in, which part 1 was all about him, the beginning of his life through to older age. Now I'm in the part where it's from his daughter's perspective. So really interesting to see certain things that happened through both perspectives very differently. It's a wonderful book. It's a library book, so I've been careful, but I've been tabbing some quotes that I like. It's a quiet novel, but there's a lot to it. The mountains on the cover are actually a good depiction of it because it's got a lot of layers. And the setting in India has been fascinating, but also it's focused on the man's life, but all these big historical things are happening during his life. Things that I didn't know much about because they happened in India. So that's been fascinating as well. I'm really enjoying my beloved life. Looking forward to reading more. And here is Amitava Kumar. Next, 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart by Jenna Rose Nethercott. This is a collection of short stories that borrow from fairy tales, folk tales, a little bit of horror in there. I read the first 2 stories and had really bad dreams one night. They're not that bad. They're not that dark, but they're dark enough. Yeah, I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to sleeping because of my chronic illness. So I decided I was only going to read during the day. She is better known as the author of the novel Thistlefoot. This is a new release. And I've heard lots of people on BookTube raving about Thistlefoot. So it was very interesting. I did not get to see her author session, but during the big event on Saturday, she did not read from her book. She performed a piece of Thistlefoot.
Must have thought when she saw me. First, my tiny golden feet cracking through the shell, all as it should be, but then the rest of me. Chimney and gate, small wooden doors, windows blue with glass. The hen, my mother, she spooked too easily. She looked at me and she didn't see a bird at all.
And then she did read aloud a little bit from 50 Beasts from the chapter A Haunted Calendar. So she explained the genesis of this chapter. It was initially a series of tweets that she wrote. So very short, one for each day of the month of October, very, very short little pieces. And she read a few select ones of these to us out loud.
Day 16. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Ghost.
Ghost who?
Go stay on the couch. I don't want to sleep next to you tonight. Day 17. If you say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times, a woman will appear. She will call you by your name. She will offer you a coupon book. This will seem like a good deal. It is not a good deal. Turn away. Don't consider the 2-liter Pepsi discount.
So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of the stories in 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart. Another author I was really looking forward to meeting, Why We Read, on Bookworms Libraries and Just One More Page Before Lights Out by Shannon Reed. I have talked about this on my channel. I read it back at the end of March, so if you look at some of my Friday reads from then or my March wrap up, You can hear all about this in detail, but it is a very entertaining look at why we read. Shannon is not only a reader, she's been a high school English teacher, a literature and writing professor in college at Pitt, and so she's got wonderful, wonderful stories. The book is very funny, very entertaining, and I really enjoyed, hearing her speak. So here is Shannon. You Are Here by Karen Lynn Greenberg was a wonderful novel. I listened to this one on audio, and again, I did talk about it in some of my Friday Reads videos in early April, if you want to go back, and I'll link those below as well. This is kind of a cross-section of life book. It's about a group of very different people, different ages, different ethnicities, different genders, who all meet because they're all associated with a mall in Albany, New York. A mall that, like many these days, is about to close. So there's all these different characters. That's the only thing they have in common at the beginning. But it is fascinating to hear their different perspectives and see how their lives cross and intersect and come together. There's humor in the book, there's warmth. I really enjoyed it, especially on audio. I was so disappointed I couldn't squeeze in her author session, but I did get to listen to her during the big event on Saturday. Instead of reading from her book, she read us an excerpt from an essay she wrote about a mall, which was wonderful. And finally, the events coordinator added an extra author at the last minute because she just couldn't resist. And that is the book A Letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Cathrall. I believe this is Sylvie's debut novel, and the bookseller, the book and the events coordinator was just so blown away by this book that she wanted to include it. So I did not get to see any of her sessions, but I was there for the Saturday night thing. This is described as a charming fantasy set in an underwater world with magical academia and a heartwarming pen pal romance. So that, I don't read a lot of fantasy, but that actually sounds good. And I did see it was recommended for people who liked The House in the Cerulean Sea. And I do like that author's books. So yeah, not my typical thing, but I might give this one a try. And definitely if you enjoy fantasy, this is a book for you. Here's Sylvie.